All right, thanks, Leah. All right, good morning. We are hereby calling this meeting of the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee to order. This meeting is being audio and video recorded. Please be aware that other people may be able to see you, and take care not to share your device's screen. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Please silence all of your devices and your phone, but not your laptop or computer, please, because we really want to hear from you. For items with public comment, after committee members have finished their discussion on an agenda item, the chair will afford members of the public up to 3 minutes to speak. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their name and any affiliations. To give public comment, you must be recognized by the chair and speak through the chair. There is to be no crosstalk with others in attendance. In the interest of the efficient use of our time, please speak through the chair. To be recognized for making a public comment, use the raise hand function by clicking the reactions tab at the bottom of your Zoom screen and click the raise hand button. When you finish your comment, please click the lower your hand button. It is important for me to note that the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee isn't required by law to take public comment. We do so because we need your invaluable input. We view public comment as a privilege, so please remain respectful in your comments and do not disparage other speakers or members of this committee. With that being said, I'm going to be taking a roll call vote. Please confirm in the affirmative that you can hear me, and so that we can be sure that we can hear you. I'm just going to go across my screen as I see you guys. Tim Brain.
I'm here.
Doug Rose.
Here.
Gary Beller.
Here.
Jen Carberg.
Here.
Christy Kickham.
Here.
Rachel Freeman.
Here.
Matt Fee.
Here.
Great, and the chair is here. I also want to recognize our staff members, Leah Hill.
Here.
Great. And Jen Carberg is one of our speakers today, who is, of course, already here. And then Mark Willett is not on just yet. Okay, great. So thanks everyone for bearing with me. Peter will hopefully be with us shortly. So the first item on the agenda is public comment. So this is reserved for public comment, anything related to the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee that is not currently on the agenda. Do we have anyone that wishes to speak as part of public comment? Okay. Thank you all. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes. Thank you. I believe, Doug, that you put these together. I appreciate it.
Just one of the two. The other is the Harbor Action Committee meeting minutes.
Right.
Those are from Peter, I think.
Okay, great. Matt, yeah.
Yeah, I had just one comment on the minutes of 423. I think it should say something about it was either Dave Iverson or John Trudell said that we should come to planning board with suggestions. Remember when we met with them, they were sort of said, well, well, I'm not sure how we deal with this. We're not sure. And then we gave them a bunch of examples. But then at the end, we wrapped it up with, what can we do? And they said, well, we're willing to listen to what you bring to us. So I think that should be captured in the minutes, because that's an important, we don't want to be looked at as overstepping our bounds later if we do bring stuff, we were told to do it. So I'd like that incorporated. And other than that, I make a motion to vote if people agree with that.
Okay, thanks. Leah, you okay to make those changes or additions? Okay.
Yep.
I'll
second. Okay, Gary Beller seconded. All in favor by roll call vote. Tim Brain.
Aye.
Doug Rose.
Aye.
Gary Beller.
Aye.
Jen Carberg.
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
Christy Kickham.
Aye.
Rachel Freeman.
Aye.
And chair abstains because I wasn't at the meeting. So, thank you. Okay, so the other set of minutes were from the Nantucket Harbor, Nantucket and Mattocket Harbor Action Plan Committee update from March 18th. Anything need to be discussed or any edits or changes to those minutes?
I'll move they be approved.
Thanks, Gary.
Second.
Thanks, Doug. Okay. Roll call vote to approve those meeting minutes. Tim Brain,
Aye.
Doug Rose,
Aye.
Gary Beller,
Aye.
Jen Carberg,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Abstain, I wasn't there.
Christy Kickham,
Yeah, abstain.
Rachel Freeman. Rachel, are you there?
Yes. Aye.
Ah.
What am I doing? Sorry, I was talking to Susan.
That's okay. And chair votes aye. Those minutes are passed.
I just have one comment with respect to not these minutes, but the previous ones we just approved. I thought it was very interesting. Doug did a good job on writing those minutes because it was very interesting as I reread some of the comments from the different representatives from all of the regulatory agencies. Normally, I'm a fan of very short minutes because they can always go to the recording. But in this particular case, I thought they were very valuable to see what these other committees were really talking about and how important they think our plan is and what kind of help they need in getting the CRP into the stuff they're doing. So thank you, Doug.
Thanks, Gary. Go ahead, Doug.
Thanks, Gary. I was going to make a similar call out, not to applaud my own minutes, but only to say that in those minutes and in the other minutes that related to other discussions we've had with other commissions, boards, and committees, I found in reviewing those notes that there were a number of follow-ups for all of us, and that we might want to review those as topics for future agenda items for future CRAC meetings. That's all. Thanks.
Great. Thanks. Thank you, Doug. I think that is, as you said, a really good source. So maybe we can all, I'm sure we all read through them in advance of this meeting. So we can read through them again with that mind towards maybe the next meeting, thinking about our future agenda items. Also, this is maybe out of order, but just because we were talking about it, thinking about at a future meeting, we're going to be re-voting in for secretary. So this is a good example of a well-taken set of notes. So keep that in mind for those who may be interested. All right. So, excuse me. Our next item on agenda is if there is any verbal response to the public comment made by Jerry Connick at the May 28th meeting. The letter is in the packet, and so it's open for discussion. Doug, go ahead.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm now frantically looking for the note I sent to Peter and Leah, but I'll extemporaneously answer myself or talk to the notes I sent. I suspect, having read Mr. Connick's most recent letter, that part of his concern may have been in some way related to a motion that I had made on the May 14th meeting, where I had suggested that there could be an opportunity for CRAC to create sort of a prototypical, there we go. There's his note, a prototypical subdistrict wherein we would be able to weave together all of the regulatory changes that might pertain to the planning board, to HDC, to CONCOM, to ZBA, and so on and so forth. With the mindset being this would be a way to make what's in the CRP real for a specific zone of the island. And I believe that was inspired by a comment that either Dave Iverson or maybe Barry Rector made, I don't recall. Anyway, long story short, my message back to Mr. Connick is only to say that in the ensuing discussion around that motion, it was pretty clear the consensus of this committee was to not do that. So if your concern in the letter here was inspired by that motion that I made, trust that we're not doing that. I do think it's an idea that there will come a time when it's an appropriate thing to do, but I take from his note that I may have been getting ahead of myself. And so it's a righteous concern he may have had, and I think the rest of the committee would agree with it. That was it. Thanks.
Thanks, Doug. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, Mr. Connick has written to the select board individually. He's attended some of the Washington Street work group meetings. And I think the concern, I think the concerns was that he and other neighbors were not going to be included, and that we were going to do a bunch of things that were going to hurt their properties or not help their properties, and that they were all going to pay for it. I think they're understanding that there's a process with 2 or 3 open meetings and a bunch of other opportunities, and it still has to go to a vote at the select board and at town meeting, et cetera. So there's a long way to go. And so I think that they are now engaged and involved hopefully in a positive manner. So thank you.
Thanks, Matt. I agree. I think that this serves as like him and maybe others who might have had similar concerns, seeing that nothing happens in that immediacy, right? There's not like a decision and then it happens. There are many checks and balances in this process and many different ways to be involved. Are there any other comments or questions related to this item?
Sarah, I can't find. Oh, sorry, Gary.
Leah, go, or wait.
Gary can go.
Gary, go ahead.
I do have one comment, and that's something I think I might have mentioned last meeting, and that is from Mr. Connick's comments. It's clear, including what we heard at the ATM, that there's still a bunch of confusion about what these coastal resilience districts can do and what is permitted to be done. So we had 2 different CRD, coastal resilience districts, activity on the warrant. One was for the home rule petition and the other was for the bylaw change. The home rule petition was defeated. The bylaw change was approved. So we have gotten the approval. So the question that I have, and I don't know the answer, maybe I've been a retired lawyer too long, but I don't know exactly, now that we have it in the bylaws, and I understand that before we can actually ask people to pay tax assessments, all of that has to get approved by the taxpayers at the ATM, right? But what are we able to do now? We do have the bylaw, it has been approved, and it does provide for creating coastal resilience districts, including the whole island and perhaps sub-districts. Is there a way, and I think we need some advice, because my question is there a way where we can start proceeding down the path? We're not talking about taxing anyone right now, so I don't want anyone in the public to think that we're ready to do that. And I understand it has to be approved by the ATM meeting. But in view of the fact that we do have an approved bylaw that allows for us to, what are we allowed to do now? And what steps can we take so that we can even think about starting to talk about betterments where there are particular projects that are going to affect one small area of the island and not the others, which to me would be an ideal way for the CRD thing to be focused on. That's my comment.
Gary, can I ask you a question? Are you saying that you want to see like it actually like move forward in a real sense with real projects, or in that outreach education sense of kind of what it would be like, or some kind of combination of both?
Well, I'd like perhaps either a lawyer or someone who understands the regulations to say, since you have a bylaw that is now part of Nantucket's laws and regulations, you can proceed. You can proceed. And what does that permit us to do? And what steps do we need to take? Is it just the select board? Or do we have to make a recommendation? Does it have to go through planning board or somebody to say, there's 1 or 2 projects here that might be appropriate for inclusion as a CRD? And what steps do we officially have to take? The bylaw allows us to go forward, and we know we're not going to tax anyone without it getting approved by the annual town meeting, which won't be until 2025, at least for this kind of thing. But what do we do now? What does the bylaw permit us to do going forward?
Thanks, Gary. Leah?
Thanks, Sarah. Gary, I can answer part of your question. So the bylaw allows the select board to actually map the area, the sub-districts. I've reached out to Vicky Marsh, part of town council, to see when does the bylaw actually get codified. And so once that does, then the select board could potentially come, to crack and ask you all to either figure out an area that should be the first considered sub-district, and go from there. But yeah, it doesn't allow any, betterments or taxations as of now. It's just the map. And then to go back to Mr. Connick's public comment, I've been in contact with him through multiple emails, and have laid out the steps of this process. It's not going to happen overnight. The bylaw has to get codified, and then the select board have to ask crack to proceed. And there has to be a project, identified, and obviously lots of conversations with the abutters of that project and the beneficiaries and all of that. So although it did get past the town meeting, that doesn't mean that it's going to happen tomorrow. So it takes a lot of time.
So our next step should be to wait for it to become official. And then the next step after that for us to ask the select board, are there one or two projects that you think are worthy of selecting some area as a CRD? Of course, they may come back to us and say, well, you guys are the experts on it. Tell us what you would recommend, which would be fine. Which would be fine.
Thanks, Gary, and thanks, Leah, too. Before we go to Shelley, are there any other committee members that want to weigh in really specifically back to Mr. Connick's comments? Okay, go ahead, Shelley.
So just a suggestion, talking about these maps in these areas, I think last week or the week before, the NAREB, the Real Estate Advisory, whatever, committee board, they redistricted the entire island with new boundaries. And homeowners are already used to hearing that, right? Path of least resistance, right? They already know where their house now lies in those areas. It just might be a safe place to start as far as not ruffling feathers, right? So they hadn't been done for over 10 years. They just got done literally last week, I think. And like I said, some people who wanted to say their house was in Surfside when it was at the airport, I have to say it's not at Surfside. So we did get some blowback on some of the boundaries, but they're done. So I'm just throwing that out there as a start that already took the first hit for you guys to use. And they're color coded. There's maps at the town building. It's all done. Done. Thanks.
Thanks, Shelley. I think that's we can put that on a future agenda item, or at least for us to all look at them to see. I would maybe we can see where they are. I know if they're at the town building, but I'm sure online they're available.
I'll send it. Yeah, easy peasy.
Okay,
I'll send it to.
Yeah, if you send it to Leah, then she can circulate it to the committee. Thank you, Shelley.
Perfect.
Go ahead, Leah. Did you want to say something?
I was just going to ask Shelley to email them to me.
Okay.
You already covered that.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I know we have an agenda item later to talk about the public outreach ideas and strategies. And so I kind of want us to be thinking about this. I think obviously we know this is an area that needs a lot of background education. So if we can do some heavy lifting ahead of time of what this might look like or what it is right now and what step we're at, if there's some long process, I think to appease people, as Gary said, when we were at town meeting and kind of realizing the misunderstandings or uncertainty. So we can kind of be thinking about that for item number 12 on thinking about outreach ideas. But the more we do ahead of time, when we're actually asking for next steps that we need people to vote on, there'll be hopefully some information at the ready. All right, any other comments on item number 5? Great. All right, thanks everybody. Item number 6 is introducing our new planning board representative, but John could not be here today. So we're gonna postpone that to another, I don't need to have everyone vote, that we're postponing that to another meeting, right, Leah?
No, you could just do it through consensus.
Okay. Item number 7, I would like to ask the committee to vote if we can postpone that to later in today's meeting, because hopefully Peter will be joining us late. Okay, so I think thumbs up are fine for this. Doesn't need to be a full vote because we're just moving it to later in this actual meeting. That's my executive decision as vice chair. All right, well, we're all the way up to item number 8, and I don't see Mark yet. Leah, have you been able to be in touch with him at all?
I emailed him maybe 10 or 15 minutes ago
Okay.
and haven't heard back. So I can try to give him a call too. I would suggest that maybe I go through the quarterly reports and then Jen can do her presentation. During that time, I can call Mark and see if he's able to jump on.
Great, that sounds good. Thanks, Jen, for being flexible and moving up. So we're going to move to item number 9, reviewing the cracked second quarter report for approval, which is in your packet. So go ahead, Leah.
Alrighty, I'm just going to share my screen. All right, can you guys see that? I see a thumbs up. Okay, so I'm going to be going through 2 quarterly reports. This one is the first quarter, so that was January to March. I will take suggestions at the end. So some of the highlights were you all gave input into the Harbor Action Plan update. You prioritized kind of the priorities for between now and 2030 recommendations, developed content for an informational brochure. You went a site visit to the sewer treatment facility, submitted a grant. You submitted multiple letters of support to the Conservation Commission regarding the regulation update, and then lots of presentations. Got a lot done. So the first is you all ranked, well, initially ranked and then just decided to do bullet points of the top 10 or 12 projects that have not gotten started yet, but should. So there's the list there. I gave an update about the Article 10 funding and where that's at. We gave input into the Nantucket Harbor Action Plan, particularly for the coastal resilience section. And the takeaway of that was really just to kind of point to the CRP as much as possible. So this is the CoSnap video that, I'm not going to play it, but it was the one that the communication office put together, and about the CoSnap at the end of Hummock Pond Road, which is a great way for the community to easily take a picture and help kind of monitor erosion at Cisco. Then you had a site visit to the sewer treatment facility to see the erosion there and how the facility works. Support letter to Concom. And then public outreach. Just talking about the social media posts and how Doug has been tracking that. Thank you, Doug. And I think we've had, Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, almost 300,000 impressions. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think last time I updated it was at 299,000, but with the last week's NRD post alone, you'd be over 300,000. So if you want to just use a nice round number, you can say we're over 300,000 impressions.
Okay, great. And then Arcadis gave a presentation about the downtown neighborhood flood barrier initial phase project, which is underway. You had a presentation by Banks, Kate Edwards, and Vicki Marsh regarding the coastal resilience districts. And then through your input, I worked with the communication office and Shelley and Isabel to create the coastal resilience guide for real estate agents and home buyers. And then you applied for the offshore wind grant, which unfortunately was not awarded. So that really wrapped up Q1. Are there any edits, suggestions, other information you think should be added into this quarter? I see Doug is raising his hand.
Yeah, really dumb comment. The word harbors in the harbors action meetings, it doesn't need an apostrophe because it's multiple harbors. That's it.
Thank you. Okay. Got it. Anything else?
Thanks, Leah. This is a really great job. I think it's kind of nice to see everything that we've done in just this quarter. Is it really just this quarter that we did all that?
Yeah, January, February, and March.
So see, everyone thinks that winter is sleepy on Nantucket, but we accomplished a lot, which is pretty nice. So thank you, Leah, for putting all that together. Gary, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think it's an excellent summary. I came up with an idea the other day in talking with some folks on my other committee. I'm on the advisory committee for non-voting taxpayers. And what I told the current chairman is that we produce this report for the select board, and that after this presentation gets made to the select board, I am going to either ask Leah or do it myself, probably with Leah's help, have this report sent to the members of our committee these are the non-voting taxpayers, and we have people who are from Attica, from Sconset, and from all over, because I think it's really important for them to know what's going on. And in that light, I'm thinking to ask you folks, once this thing is presented to the select board, and by the way, I plan on doing this each quarter after we finish and after we send it to the select board and after they receive it. Question is, should we even think about expanding that? Are there any other organizations? I mean, I'm going to make sure we send it to the non-voting taxpayers committee, but are there other committees that ought to receive it so they know what's going on? Because the more our public finds out that we are constantly working and thinking about the CR plan and we are taking steps and doing things, it'll take some of the confusion away from the public saying, who are these guys or what are they doing and are they helping us? That's my thoughts.
So I see Pete's here, so I can cede control of the meeting to our chair, Peter Brace. You don't need to raise your hand, Pete.
No, actually, I was trying to raise my hand to make it think that I was just another board member and I wouldn't have to run this time. No, actually, I did want to say something. I was thinking that maybe, every time we do a social media post, that this could go out. There could be a link to it somewhere.
Go ahead, Leah. Sorry.
Thank you. When I share my screen, I can't get my little hand icon up. So anyway, I'm going to use my regular hand. I will put these on. I will have the communication office upload all the quarterly report presentations onto the CRAC webpage, and so they'll be there, and people can access them there. And I can also do a social media post that we have a link tree. So if they click on our bio, then they can go straight to the CRAC webpage and find the quarterly reports there.
Doug, go ahead. Thanks, Leah.
Just a thought, and this may actually come later in the agenda around when we talk about public outreach, but another kind of related thought to Gary's suggestion was to ask if the Civic League might distribute these quarterly reports to their constituents as well. Just a thought. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else? Have we really gotten all the way down to item 9 in like half an hour?
So I can update you real quick, Pete, if everyone will appease me. First of all, we need to vote on this as approval. Leah went through the presentation, but we haven't voted on it yet.
Okay.
We skipped item 7 and 8 because Mark wasn't here yet, and we wanted to wait for you as the chair before we did item number 7.
Okay. So we need to take a vote on.
So I make a motion to approve the quarterly report.
And I'll second it. Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor, roll call vote. Sarah Boyce,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
Doug Rose,
Aye.
Gary Beller,
Aye.
Jennifer Carberg,
Aye.
Christy Kickham,
Aye.
Joanna Roach.
Aye.
Where are we here now? Matt Fee,
Aye.
Rachel Freeman. Rachel Freeman.
Aye.
Okay. And chair votes aye. Awesome.
Hey, Peter, I'm going to go to the second quarterly report if that's okay.
Okay.
Okay, so now this is the second quarter from April to the end of June. There are a couple slides in here that I have not finished because of this meeting. So after this meeting, I will add in information for those slides. So I'm hoping at the end of the report summary that you all can vote to accept it with me adding in that necessary information. All right. So the first 2 slides kind of have to do with crack, but not really. It was suggested to me by Brooke Moore that when I give these quarterly reports, I also give updates about kind of the ongoing coastal resilience projects. So this would be the Washington Street Resilience Project that the town and the land bank and Remain are jointly working on for the kind of the, I guess, phase 1 of the long-term Washington Street planning. So it incorporate Francis Street Beach, the parcel across the street, and then the Saltmarsh Center as well. So I'll add input for that. And then for the downtown neighborhood flood barrier, so the Easy Street project that I'm the project manager on as well. Okay, getting into crack. So the highlights from this quarter, again, you gave input into the Harbor Action Plan update. You completed the homeowner survey, which you all decided to extend. You finalized the informational brochure. You had a downtown site visit. We had a recap on coastal resilience districts, and then the great discussions with local regulatory boards and commissions. So again, input into the Harbor Action Plan. Kurt Bosma from Woods Hole Group gave an excellent presentation about the Massachusetts Coastal Flood Risk Model. And then we had Peter Morrison recap the survey, the homeowner survey. So then we had a discussion on the next steps for the survey. And I should point out that Emily Molden said that she could give crack like 5 or 10 minutes or so at the State of the Harbor, which is in July, to kind of introduce yourself and then talk about the survey. And I'll have little cards made up with the QR code, and those will be at every seat and handed out to all the people that attend. So that can be another way for us to kind of get the word out to get more participants for the survey. Then you worked on the real estate and home buyers brochure. And this is what it looks like. I'll email this to all of you. It's a trifold that has the different maps and models available for people to look at. Some of you came on the site visit from Children's Beach down to Francis Street Beach. Another conversation about Articles 67 and 69. Talked about different public outreach ideas. And then Jen's presentation today. Hopefully a discussion with Mark Willett today. And then the two meetings with discussing regulations could be updated or needed for coastal resiliency topics. And then this is where Peter and I will request that if the select board can give CRAC the opportunity to comment or suggest on how to incorporate coastal resiliency into local regulations. So this kind of falls into the next agenda item, but that is the end of the second quarterly report. So if there's any questions or comments, suggestions, I am open to them. If not, someone can make a motion to accept it.
Leah,
Yes, Gary.
could you, you had a slide in the first quarterly report and a slide on the second quarterly report on that Washington Street. I'm trying to remember what the difference is from what the first slide showed and the second slide showed. I mean, the second quarterly report showed. Is it exactly the same?
Regarding Washington Street?
Yeah, the one that shows.
So the
Go
Washington
back
Street
two
side,
slides. Go back, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. This one, yeah. No,
so this was,
no, the next slide. No, go back.
that's the survey.
No, I
So-
think I missed it.
So the one that showed the illustration with the two streets
Yes, that's the one.
said beneficiaries on it.
Yep.
Oh, that was CRDs. That was coastal resilience districts. This one?
Yes, that's the one. So what's the difference between this slide in the second quarter report?
So
And-
this one was after town meeting. Vince came and talked about the two articles. And then we had that long conversation about how it was evident to all of us that there was a lot of confusion and that outreach and engagement regarding coastal resilience districts would be very beneficial this summer. In the first quarter report, it has the same picture, but that was when Vicky Marsh, Kate Edwards, and Vince came and talked about the coastal resilience districts and explained them in a lot of detail prior to town meeting.
Okay, but the pictures are exactly the same, right? Yeah.
Pictures are exactly the same, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Gary. I would think that Leah's got to, certain things have to happen, and then she can fill this out. Then we'll have more comments. This is sort of an outline of what it's going to be, right, Leah?
Yeah, so when I actually give the quarterly report at the select board meeting, I go into a lot of detail about every slide. I'm kind of just giving you like the broad overview of the format and what you all did.
Well, I say it looks good so far.
I'll make a motion to approve with the caveat that Leah had articulated, which is that she'll finish out the last couple of slides. But a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion has been seconded. We'll take a roll call vote. Sarah Boyce,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
Doug Rose.
Aye.
Gary Beller,
Aye.
Jennifer Carberg,
Aye.
Christy Kickham.
Aye.
Joanna Roach,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Rachel Freeman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Right, great.
It's very impressive, all the work we've done. They're probably going to raise our compensation as a result of this.
Yeah, let's make our meetings 3 hours instead of 2, so we can do more. Great. Okay, so we'll go back up to discussion and approval for CRAC's chair to speak on behalf of CRAC at the Conservation Commission's final public hearing regarding the local wetland regulation update. This is basically on here so that you guys know that at least Leah and myself will be at this meeting, and I believe in person, and that I'm going to read the letter that we have already sent in just to reiterate what our stance is, and I guess maybe to get you guys to give me permission to sort of, I don't know. After I get done reading the letter, I might just add in a few things, but I don't know what those would be. Because I don't know how the meeting's going to go. I have a sense of who is going to be there and what they're going to say, but I may just, depending on when I get to stand up, react to what has already been said. And are there things you guys don't want me to say? I'd like to hear that. Otherwise, I'll of course be careful, but I'm just trying to, everywhere I go and in the community and in my life, try to drive home the point of the importance of CRAC and the importance of the Coastal Resilience Plan, and paying attention to what the icebergs are doing and the water is coming up, and trying to get everybody to hear us. So just reading the letter coming from us and saying that this is how our committee feels, it can be only added to a bit by things that I say, then okay, or you guys can tell me not to do that. So Tim Brain, go ahead.
Yeah, just so you know, and I'm sure you do, and everybody else knows, this is supposed to be the last meeting, and there will be a vote at the end of it. We voted, the last meeting was supposed to be a vote, but there were several members of the public and commission members who felt there needed to be another public meeting. So that's what this is about. But in the process of that, there was a commitment to take a vote at the end of the meeting. So this is the last opportunity, maybe, unless that changes, to make comments. So I think it's good that you're going to do that. And I would support anything you want to say.
Thanks, Tim. And I also want to reiterate what the Concom administrator, Will, I'll butcher his name, D'Umbra, has said, that, that as Tim just said, this is the last opportunity. So the more of us that can make that meeting, either, by Zoom or can be there in person, it'd be nice for me to be able to say, in addition to myself, our coastal resilience coordinator is here sitting next to me, and here is our whole committee, or several of us, whoever can make it, it makes a statement.
When is it?
It's Thursday night at 5 p.m. at 4FG. Big comfortable seats, air conditioning. Is there a soda machine out there? I don't know. So anyway, there's that fun to go to. Unless you guys have, okay, Leah, go ahead.
Thanks, Peter. I was just going to say, if you think that you're going to come and we may get quorum, I need to do a posting like today. So if we can kind of get a little, maybe a roll call of who may come to see if I need to post, that'd be helpful.
Leah, I'll be there because I'm on Concom, so I have to be there.
Tim, I see Doug, your hand up.
I'm a maybe.
Sarah saying
I'm a maybe.
no.
I'm a
Gary,
maybe.
maybe. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so then I won't have to post. Great, that makes it easy on me. Thank you.
Leah, it's Rachel. I'm a maybe, probably.
Okay. And maybe probably. Got it.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
that still won't get us to quorum, so that's fine. Okay.
Okay, so you guys are all set.
Peter,
Go
I
ahead.
support what you're planning on doing, you and Leah, and what you want to say. You know, we saw from our meeting with the regulators that it's really something that needs to be done. And I have read in the comments online, there's some people that are gonna, as usual, going to delay it again. I hope they won't succeed, because it really is something that is very important to the overall protection of the island over the long run. And the longer we wait, the worse it's going to be. So Godspeed.
Well, I don't have anything major. I don't have anything divergent from what we already put
Right.
in letter form. All I was saying was that I may react to what people say before me if there's anything that I need to clarify, so that the people who are there understand what it really is. And something I feel strongly about is that continuing to develop at the water's edge is not going to benefit anybody, and that since I'll be in a place where a lot of people will see me and hear me, then I want to be able to say that, so that, and I'll also probably say something like, we're the longest range planning board committee for the town, longer than the planning commission. And so it's hard for people to understand what we do. But I'll just ask that people believe in us and trust us and stuff like that. So, and I'll do it in a really deep voice, so they'll be terrified of me. So, okay. Rachel and Doug, did you have things to say? Doug, do you have something to say?
Yeah, Peter, I was just going to say, if you need a motion, I'd be happy to make it, approving your plan.
Sure, Doug, go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve. Hopefully it'll be unanimous. That you go forward and speak to Concom as per our discussion tonight.
Second.
Second from Tim. Okay, roll call vote. Sarah Boyce,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
Doug Rose,
Aye.
Gary Beller, Jen Carberg,
Aye.
Christy Kickham,
Aye.
Joanna Roach,
Aye.
Nat Fee,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Okay,
Pete,
yes, who's this?
this is Rachel, and first of all,
Okay.
I didn't vote, and second of all, I have a comment.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
First, I vote aye, but I do, and I know I've said this before, but I do want, I firmly agree with you that development along the shoreline is not beneficial to coastal resiliency. Again, just reiterating the fact that I think there's a fine line to be walked, because when you prevent development, you run the risk of preventing coastal resiliency planning as well. So, you know, for example, with Washington Street, the current projected plan actually has a berm with some form of hardened structure within it. So that would be the type of thing that might be considered development along the shoreline. And I'm not, again, I have never been able to quite figure out how we merge the two. But I would request that your comments to the Concom somehow include that component, that we're not against, you know, nature-based solutions or, you know, other types of things along the coastline that are beneficial to potential coastal beneficial to the public. When it comes to coastal resiliency, it really is the creation of structures, perhaps. Again, that even gets dicey. So I don't know quite the right way to say it, but
I know what you're saying, and if I even get that far, then I will say something to that effect, but I'm gonna keep going back to my example of the house on Loretta Lane, which from the beach in Pocomo, you can look right across the wetland, across the low road, and right at that
Right,
house.
completely.
And
I
I'm talking
completely-
about houses like that and houses on
Yep.
Mariner Way and the houses being built on Meter Street and anything that's in a low-lying area where anybody with half a brain can see that the water is going to affect those houses a lot sooner. I'm going to use those examples. So,
Fantastic.
so that's what I'll do.
Thank you.
Okay, Matt?
Yeah, just, I want, Rachel had a really good point. I think there's certain things that Concom and state law and everything is requiring that has to catch up with the reality that we're facing. And so I just think that that's might be a nice way to say it.
Peter,
Okay,
also, the provisions do provide special waivers, so if there's something in the public interest, the Concom can actually do a special waiver. So I don't think, so for Rachel's concerns, that could be dealt with by a special request for a waiver, and if it makes sense, they will do it. And no one would complain.
or what Rachel's talking about is exempt because it's for the greater good and we need that. It should be a coastal resilience exemption. Maybe that's a term we use or something. I'm not going to go too crazy. I'm just going to react to what I hear. I'm sure there'll be other opportunities for us to speak our minds to a larger group. And if we're having a town meeting in September that will consider a Article 67-esque article, I imagine I'll be speaking in support of it. So there'll be a bigger group to talk to there, and maybe I'll have a prepared statement, but either way. Did you still have your hand up, Rachel, for a reason? Or are you done?
Nope, sorry, I'll take it down.
Okay. All right. So, all right, we're done with this, except
Peter, it's Deanne.
yes, Deanne, I was getting to you. I said we're done with this, and we'll now take public comment.
Oh, thank you. I wanted to comment on this topic and just tell you how thrilled I am to see you really taking a stand on this. I wanted to point out, and I'm not sure all of you know, that the wetland regulations, the updates are on the select board agenda for tomorrow night. And maybe with respect, Mr. Chair, through you, we could ask Matt why they are on the select board agenda. And first question, and the second question, is the select board getting a lot of pushback against the updated regulations?
Okay, Deanne.
Thank you.
Matt, do you want to try and handle that?
Can I duck her? Can I duck your question, Deanne?
You got your face there.
No, I'm not going to do that. No, I'd say it's on as I believe it's on as another venue for people to speak about it. I think it was viewed as an opportunity for there's a lot of people listen to the select board, maybe more than listen to the Concom meetings, and this is a chance for public awareness for the issue is number one. And what was the other question?
Mr. Chair, the other question, Matt, thank you. The other question is, are members of the select board getting pushback?
Oh, that's right. I can't speak for the other members. I can speak for myself, and I haven't heard myself a lot about it. But then I think, I'm on this committee and I'm fairly, I think my views that we should be looking ahead and planning for the future are pretty well known. So maybe they're just not bothering to bug me. So who knows?
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Thank you, Deanne. Is there any other public comment on this item? Okay. And we'll move on to item 8, conversation with Mark Willett, director of Wannacomet Water Company, about the impacts of sea level rise on Nantucket's aquifer. Is he here yet, Leah?
No, Peter, I called the office and he's actually out sick today. So
all right.
he will not be able to attend the meeting. So I'll touch base with him about attending a meeting in July.
Okay, very good. All right, then that's number 10. Update on CRP recommendation, 4-3, Code 2 Erosion Management and Dune Resilience by Dr. Jen Carberg, Senior Wetland Ecologist and Director of Research and Partnership for Nantucket Conservation Foundation. All you, Jen.
Thanks, Pete. Leah, is it okay if I share my screen?
Yes, you should have access. If not, let me know.
Okay. Are you guys seeing it in presentation mode?
We're seeing it in your computer mode. So
Okay.
with all the stuff at the top.
Yep. I'll try it one more time. We can just do it that way if it doesn't want to update for me, but how about now?
Got it.
All right. So what I'm going to update on today is just progress for the work that's happened out on the Coscata Cotu Wildlife Refuge. And this is a partnership that the Nantucket Conservation Foundation has been working jointly with the trustees on for a number of years now. We've done quite a bit of work out here now, first to understand the areas that are at risk, and then start to figure out what is possible as far as increasing resiliency on the refuge, and then what we would actually want to do, as this is a wildlife refuge that's out here. So I'm currently working jointly with Alejandra Navarez, who is the coastal project manager with the trustees out on the refuge. And this is particularly thinking, broadly, it's for us, it's understanding, what are the ecological impacts, because it's a wildlife refuge that we manage in tandem, but also understanding that breaches are possible out here. That's the major concern, is if there's erosion and flooding breaches on the refuge, how does that then impact, or that has the potential to impact the harbor in town. We aren't necessarily researching what will happen if there's a breach, but we're trying to understand the potential for breaches and if there's adaptation that we can do. So about 4 years ago now, we entered into a partnership with Woods Hole Group, which is a consulting company, who were hired to do an analysis of 4 sites that we gave them out on the refuge. You can see them on the map here. These are the 4 sites that, between the staff at both organizations, we had identified as the ones that we'd seen the most change in recent years, that we thought were the most at risk for flooding, erosion, potential breach impacts. So that's the Hallover, Coscata Pond on the East Beach side, the Galls, obviously, and then between First and Second Point out on the Cotu Refuge is seeing significant flooding. And so Woods Hole prepared, they did an assessment of each of these sites, did a whole lot of complicated modeling, and then prepared a report for us, which we call the AAA report. It's assessment and analysis of adaptive interventions for the Coscata Cotu properties. They really helped us get an understanding of existing conditions out on the site, potential erosion impacts, looking at how storms might impact the site, and gave us a highly detailed, analysis of what the vulnerability was at these 4 sites. But we didn't necessarily get to the adaptive alternatives in this report that we really wanted to see. Honestly, the adaptations they gave us were to put big envelopes of sand on top of these places so that could erode away. And that wasn't really what we were looking at for adaptive alternatives out here, for a number of reasons. One of which being that sand is a really highly valued commodity on island, and putting it on places just to prevent a breach when that might not be, ecologically a bad thing. It wasn't exactly where we wanted to go. So we wanted some more information. Quick, just general findings of that report, which I thought would be interesting to show. This was a map of future conditions in 2050 out on the site. The current shoreline is in there. The red is the mean higher high water, so kind of the highest flooding you would see each month without a storm impact. And then the yellow is the 1% probability of inundation. So that 100-year storm, what gets inundated. And as you can see, it pretty much covers the entire refuge, whether it's from the ocean side or the harbor side. The refuge is really vulnerable to storm surge. Present day, about 91% of the refuge has a 100% chance of inundation at some point during the year. But I will point out, if you look at that map, most of those areas that are in red are salt marsh areas. So yes, they'll flood, but they're designed and adapted to flood throughout the year. That's part of their resilience. And then an even higher percent chance of flooding by 2070. Essentially what we found is that yellow areas that are out there, those are the higher dune areas. Those are the ones that are resistant to being flooded, you know, up to 2070, even 2080, but erosion on those areas will increase the chance, you know, of a breach out there. The other thing they pulled, and this is just interesting for everyone to see, is shoreline change out there, thinking about erosion. The green is accumulation of area. So that's where we've actually seen growth in the refuge. And this timeline is from 1846 to 2019. And you can find this data. It's a lot of CZM data that's been done. You can see the areas where the refuge is growing, but then you can also see in red the areas where there's erosion, and the longer the lines, the greater the erosion. So from this, when we got the report, we wanted to figure out what next steps were, and we actually focused in on 2 areas out on the refuge to get more information on, and those areas are really most vulnerable. There's a property each for NCF and the trustees that we're moving ahead with. And they're the areas that are closest to access. So we picked the Hallover and Coscotta Pond. There's significant erosion on that east beach. If there is a breach at the Hallover, that could have potential impacts for the harbor and for town. You have to pass through each of these areas to access the refuge. So a breach at either of these sites might not necessarily have massive ecological consequences for the refuge, but it would impact public access. And, you know, limiting public access to this site, it's a really unique refuge. It's places that we want to be able to get people out to. Not everyone has a boat, which would severely limit who could, you know, access and appreciate the refuge. So we chose the Hallover and Coscotta Pond to focus in on next, and go after a larger grant with another consultant that could get us some actual adaptive alternatives. And then I should mention, one of the things that the Woods Hole group found when they did this report was thinking within their modeling, and we want more sediment analysis to confirm this, but if there was a breach at the Hallover or Coscotta Pond with a storm, it would most likely close up at least within the year, because there's so much sediment transport on that outside east beach. So the idea of a permanent opening out there is, at least in the near term future, not something that we're very worried about. So looking at the Hallover site, it's half salt marsh, half dune system, protection in Nantucket Harbor. We're interested in the salt marsh is already migrating, you know, out there. The aerial photos are great because you can see the areas in the roads that are already starting to look wet. That's where we're getting higher tides that are coming in. There's definitely an issue of access along the main road. We do occasionally get flooding from the East Beach over the road that goes out to the East Beach and then down into that inside road. So we're getting significant flooding out there. And then Coscotta Pond, there's significant salt marsh in here, but there's the pond as well. There's been a lot of loss of the outside beach out here, and we're interested in figuring out how we can kind of stabilize this area of the shoreline out here. So we got, in conjunction with the trustees, a National Fish and Wildlife Grant this year. We have a year in which to complete the terms of the grant. So what we're looking for is an in detailed, you know, site assessment of both of those sites, for them to present us with a series of 2 to 3 design alternatives for increasing resiliency that are focused on nature-based solutions, and maybe thinking a little innovatively about, if sand is the solution to increase elevation, how do we capture sand that's naturally moving around the areas versus trucking in sand to a wildlife refuge. And then they're going to give us, final design alternatives up to 30% of the designs that we, of the design at each site that we select. There is going to be public outreach associated with this, so we're hoping for an August or September public meeting to present findings so far, and then something else later in the, probably in the winter months as they're moving closer to what the design alternatives are. We ended up selecting GZA, who is new to this site, but we were really impressed with their proposal, and they have an entire studio called their Design with Nature Studio by GZA. They've done a lot of nature-based innovations in other states, like Rhode Island, where more stuff is allowed than it is here. But they're coming to it with a larger perspective of innovations that we might be able to use out on the refuge. We've talked about potentially building off of the oyster reef that we have out in Pulpus Harbor, something similar that could be used to stabilize shorelines, capturing sand to build up the salt marsh in the haulover. And they know that our desire is to protect, the ecological nature of the refuge while preventing breaching, but also to do what we can to facilitate and continue public access across this site, because it's really key. And then just so that you guys know some of the things that we're thinking about as far as nature-based coastal resiliency alternatives, these are things that have been done elsewhere. It's nothing crazy. It's nothing, that we haven't seen yet, although we'll see what this team comes up with, but really building off the ideas of capturing sand that's moving, doing native plantings. Really, the best solution is building elevation on these sites so you can keep ahead of sea level rise and erosion and impacts from storm surge. And elevation comes through capturing sand that's moving around in the areas or helping the salt marshes grow in elevation as well. GZA is starting this month. We're getting them a lot of information now. We're hoping to give them data that NCF and some of the other conservation groups on island have been working on to update the vegetation maps for the island. So they'll use some of that data. They'll use data that Woods Hole has used before. We've reached out to the town to see if any of the bathymetry or sediment data would be available to add to this project, because that will only enhance our understanding of protecting the refuge. But they're really just getting started. So I will have more details on what this project looks like, hopefully in a couple months, and I'll let everyone know when the public meetings are available. And I think that's what I had, Leah. Pete, you're muted.
Jen, I have a question for you. On this next to last slide, there was a picture of the proposal, and the date was May 3rd, 2024. Is that the picture of Great Point? Because if it is, then it looks like the road is washed out already. So I was curious if that picture with the proposal was of Great Point, and at May 3rd, it was no longer reachable, at least for the time being.
Yeah. I don't know when they grabbed that aerial photo. It definitely wasn't from May 3rd. It does look like at the Gulls, it's not connected any longer, but it is still connected. If you haven't been out there in a while, the Gulls is extremely vulnerable. That's entirely on trustees' property. It is a very low, barely a sand berm at this time between the East Beach and Nantucket Sound. And it has very recently washed over in storms. It can be crossed, by cars now. There is still a connection. It's not under at every, high tide cycle, but we've had some storm wash over there. It is, it's amazing nesting bird habitat now because it's all this bare open sand. So when we picked the two sites that we picked, we didn't end up adding the Gulls in or the point farther out in Co2. One, because the trustees owns the Gulls and NCF owns the spots out on Co2. If we're disconnected there, there's not as much of an impact to harbor and town, so they weren't on that higher priority list for us. And honestly, getting a permit now to do any intervention at the galls is going to be extremely difficult because of the significance of the bird nesting habitat. So we figured we'd focus at the 2 sites first, and then see what is possible further down the line. But you can still drive out there. I actually think
I go to the picnic in August. I support the trustees. I'm wondering where we're going this year.
you can go out there, although a lot of it's fenced off for nesting birds now. We boated past the other day and there was a very small car parking area right out at the point. So it's always changing out there.
Thank you.
I think, sorry, Doug, go ahead.
Oh, thanks, Peter. And Jen, great presentation. I find this topic especially fascinating because I imagine organizations like NCF and the trustees must have some very deep philosophical discussions about, if our mission is conservation and preserving nature, to what degree do we want to engineer, some sort of extended access? And I guess maybe not so much a question as just sort of a comment. I feel like these kind of philosophical questions you guys are wrestling with are just the tip of the iceberg, to coin, to pardon the pun. I personally have reservations about things like beach nourishment. It's a very polite term. I think it's a sort of a marketing term for what I perceive to be, an engineering project. It turns a beach into a construction zone. And I'm sure you guys have wrestled with that. And does this make sense in order to allow people to continue to drive their trucks and cars and whatnot? I guess I will ask one question in a very roundabout way. As an alternative to doing sort of human engineering on these very pristine natural environments, would there be alternatives that would simply enhance alternative ways of accessing them? In other words, if there was a skiff or some kind of a boat, small scale ferry system or something like that would allow people to still access things maybe on foot once they've been completely overwashed. So I'll stop with that. Thank you for the presentation. It's great.
You're welcome. And if I can respond to that, Pete, through you.
Yep.
Yeah, really great comments, Doug. And it's true, as conservation organizations, that is the conversation we have. I will say beach nourishment is not on our radar at all. And that's what, some of the feedback we got from the first consultant and, why we're moving ahead in a different direction. We're not interested in dumping sand on the beach that's going to be taken away, because we're just then replacing the natural function of what the refuge is doing, and then we're taking sand from other projects that may be needed on the island. It's such a valuable resource. What we're doing right now, we're not imagining that anything we do will protect access to the refuge for the next 50 years. We just don't know what that variability is going to be, and it's a balance between ecology and access. We have talked about, what are the other solutions going to be if we get something in place here, if we migrate where roads are. Our adaptation is trying to think of like you said, balancing both of those. I do worry about if we lose driving access out there, because then it really makes the refuge, you have to have a certain amount of money then to be able to access the refuge, and it changes the accessibility of a place like that and who can get out there. And it's it's a place that a lot of different groups of people go out to in the summer to use. And so thinking about that equity of access is also kind of high on our list. So we'll see what this group is able to give us as alternatives, and I'll be interested in bringing that back to you guys.
Thanks, Jen. Go ahead, Leah.
Thanks, Peter. Jen, that was awesome. Thank you for updating us all. I just wanted to comment that I think August is going to be a very busy time for community engagement around coastal resiliency projects. I know that the Easy Street Project and the Washington Street Project are trying to figure out a day the first week of August to have like a big community open house. And then I think the next week, the Lily Pond Project, which has resilience aspects to it, is gonna have another one. So we'll have to
Awesome.
coordinate the dates and the times and stuff and work through that.
Sounds good. We'll do that. Mhm.
Jen, I had one question, and is there a point that you think that the foundation and the trustees and I guess the Fish and Wildlife Service throws in the towel?
Possibly. I mean, I don't know what the next, 30, 50 years will do. I think the desire is, as long as we have alternatives that we are okay with from a nature-based solution, from a conservation, wildlife protection solution, and then have the funding to do those alternatives, we'll move ahead with it. If there becomes then a conflict between what we're trying to do on the refuge from a conservation piece and the alternatives we need to do, then that'll be another discussion then.
So I asked that question because, as I said earlier, we are the longest range planning public entity with the town. And I can envision a time when the open ocean is hitting downtown Nantucket, when it is hitting from Monomoy up to Walwinet. I don't know when that's going to be, but that'll be, if it gets serious enough, and I always try and think of all the possible angles, you might envision the town just imploring the foundation and trustees to do something, or to let it get in there and build something, or, because, the Native Americans experienced Nantucket without the post-glacial deposits. So they knew what it was like with the water breaking on the shores, but we didn't. We don't know what that's like. The people along the shoreline of the inner harbor, they if they get to see it in the wintertime, they see that the fetch from the Cotu to the shores isn't that long. So you get these choppy waves, but it's nothing like when the ocean comes in. So that's hard for us as a committee to convince the public of various things, because you can't imagine what it might be, but I can think about it. I mean, I guess I spend a lot of time out at places like that. And anyway, just.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And I think we're aware of the fact that the refuge is what creates the harbor of Nantucket. And so that's why we're willing to invest this time and energy into these kind of resiliency projects right now. I mean, the models look like the refuge will continue to be protective at least into the next 70, 80 years. I mean, the good thing about it is there is a lot of sediment out there, and it is accumulating out there, so we have the sediment. It's, just responding to sea level rise. Barrier beaches, there's essentially almost no engineered structures out there. And what barrier beaches are really, really good at doing is migrating. They roll over, they shift and change their position. So as long as we're okay with the refuge adapting itself and then seeing if there's ways we can help enhance that, that's the path we're, hoping to take now. And then they'll just, we'll adapt in the next 20 years, the next 40 years, and just continue that process. I think that's what I can say now. I don't know what someone in my position will say in 40 years from now. We might live in a different kind of Nantucket then. So, but right now, that's what we're hoping for.
Awesome. Thank you. Sure.
Thank you, Peter. Jen, thank you so much. This was a great presentation. I really appreciate the update and knowing what's going on out there. This is maybe not completely correlated, but I have been watching the Barrier Beach shift on Tuckernuck, and it's a far less populated island, so there's not as much interest in it, but it has been interesting to watch how that basically what was the lagoon on Tuckernuck, that Barrier Beach has basically shifted around and done exactly what your the Woods Hole model was showing in terms of moving and then basically to some degree going away. And so it's I didn't know if you spent any time looking at those maps. I know it's completely different wave action patterns and shoals and whatnot, sediment transport, but I just thought maybe it would be interesting because it almost looks like it's ahead of what's happening at Great Point. So thanks.
Absolutely.
Okay, is there anyone else? Are there any members of the public that have anything to say on this? All right, great job, Jen. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Okay, we'll move on to recap and discussion on the 2 meetings with regulatory boards, commissions, committees, examples of potential broad policy and regulation changes to incorporate coastal resilience to present to the select board on Wednesday, the 26th, 2024. So this is what you guys have voted. You've asked me to go to the select board and say, we want your permission to start working on what we think are recommendations to the various regulatory boards of basically the public coming and applying for permits to develop land that's on the ocean, and giving them certain regulations that they're going to have to adhere to with coastal resilience and the plan in mind. And so I guess we're just looking for examples, so that when I get up there, I'm not stumbling over my words, and we're able to say, you know, I can't always lean on the Loretta Lane house. I got to come up with other examples, but you know, this is why we're doing this. I'm betting that the select board will let us go do this, but we have to be convincing. So, I'll take your suggestions. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I'll kick it off. I hope others chime in, but I would encourage you, Peter, to think about ways in which the CRP can affect regulations beyond suppressing development in at-risk areas. And I'll give you a couple of examples from our recent conversations with the other boards and commissions. One that stuck in my head was regulations that limit impervious surfaces, right? So in an area like Brant Point, which is really not so much threatened by erosion per se, it's more like groundwater effects and whatnot. You know, there may be different regulation changes that would affect an area like Brant Point than let's say, Smith's Point. So I guess I'm just saying there's so many different ways in which the CRP speaks to the need for updating regulations. It's more than just shutting down oceanfront property development, or in some way mitigating against that. So I'm running. Oh, another one was height. And maybe there's some state regulations that stand in the way of changing things, but I know the HDC is sensitive to height limits. And yet there are some areas of the island where it may make sense from a CRP perspective to relax some of those standards. So that's all I've got at the moment. Thanks.
Okay, is there anyone else? Gary?
Yes, I just want to clarify what you're thinking of asking. Are you planning on asking the select board for permission for you to represent us before other regulatory boards on matters that are coming up before them, which we believe have implications relating to our coastal resiliency plan, short, medium, or long term? Is that what you're asking them, to give us permission? No. So tell me what it is. I'm confused a little.
We're basically telling them, reminding them that we are advisors of the select board. We're telling them that. They know that already, but we're coming to them and saying, it's time that we start to get our regulatory boards on board with coastal resilience and make it so when applicants come in to do a development that's within a flood zone, that there are new regulations, updated regulations that address future sea level rise, address the water coming up, so that people just don't go in and build and not know that I guess in a way it kind of works with the real estate agents, so we're not just building a house that's going to get washed away. It's okay, if you're gonna build a house there, you're gonna have to do these things. You're gonna have to check these boxes on your application. And I don't know what they are, but it's, if we keep on building in the way of danger, it's gonna come, it's gonna be a problem. I'm reaching here, but I guess what I'm saying is that it's another way for us to get the word out. If you, Joe homeowner or property owner, you're gonna build something on your property and you're in the flood zone, you must know that there's some danger, but you may not. We want to tell you that. We want to tell you what you can and can't build. I guess it's a sort of instead of building with Nantucket in mind, it's building with sea level in mind, something like that. So no, it's not me going to a meeting or select meetings, because I don't have time for that. It's putting it to the regulatory boards and their administrations to meet the applicants right away with a coastal resilience question. Did you know about the coastal resilience plan? Did you know you're in an area that is subject to storm surge, stormwater flowage? Did you know that in 20 years the water is going to be here? Okay, what's your plan? Like that. Leah.
Thanks, Peter. I just wanted to touch on that. What we're asking is comments and suggestions to add to the regulations to update them. So that doesn't mean that they're going to accept them. It's just, here are some coastal resilience ideas that you could add into your specific boards or commissions regulations to kind of get up to speed to coastal resilience risks that are happening. And so, it doesn't just focus on building, but it's the whole kind of overarching coastal resilience. Let's put on the lens of coastal resiliency and look at the different regulations and how those could potentially be updated. So for example, the wetlands regs right now, there wasn't even sea level rise definition in the old, or I guess in the current regulations. And so it's things like that, like adding sea level rise in, adding planting with resilient plants that are native plants instead of, planting with hydrangeas or whatever. It's just like really overarching coastal resiliency lens onto the different regulations. If that makes sense. And this is a long process. So, the wetlands regs, it's been years that those have been trying to be updated and passed. And so it's not something that's going to happen overnight, but what we heard was from all those boards is yes, the regulations need to be updated, and that yes, we should have joint meetings and conversations with the different chairs to educate them about coastal resiliency and how that could be incorporated into applications or their thought process.
And can't we do that now?
That's what we're asking the select board.
Can we not? But don't we think we are the committee? We are CRAC. We're the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee. Don't we think it's within our province today to go to the select board and say, we'd like to recommend to you that you see if you can affect changes to these wetlands rules or something? Why would we have to go to them and ask them if we can say that to them in the future? We could say that to them now.
Because sorry, Peter.
I'm sorry, both of you. Yes, we can do that, but we want to go to them and tell them that we're going to be working on that, and we want to hear from them if they have any concerns, if they want to tell us. We just their advice. That's all. Yes, we can do that. That is our charge, to advise them. But
let's skip the middle step. Let's do it. When we come up with what we want to recommend, of course. Let's skip the middle step, skip the middleman, save money in between, and go right to the heart and save a little time.
I think it's us going to them and saying, we're going to be working on this, and be prepared. And do you have anything you want to tell us? And some of the ideas that we might we might be coming up with, you know, eventually in the long term, there may be a situation where we'll need no build zones because it just is never going to be feasible to build there based on how much the water's coming up. We're advising them by doing this. So it's a step. Go ahead, Shelley.
Is it okay to public comment right now?
For this conversation, it is.
Thank you. So taking it back to real estate, just a couple red flags that went up in my mind. Right now, property owners are feeling very attacked because of the short-term rental debate. So it's just a really tricky time to then try to say what they're going to hear is we're also restricting more of your property rights. So I just want to caution at this moment, there's a very heated environment about homeowners feeling that their property rights are being attacked because of a completely different issue. But attacked is attacked, and people are on edge. That was just one idea that I have from talking to property owners often. The other thing, and I don't really have this fleshed out because I just wrote it while you were talking, but it seems to me that rather than kind of flip the order, rather than, and what coastal resiliency is doing is incredibly important, but what if we flipped the order and got the priorities from each of those bodies and then tailored the recommendations to what matters to them? And I don't know if I'm presenting that correctly, but there's so much about crack that could affect different aspects of property ownership on this island, right? So I just feel that maybe if we went to the HDC and got their priority, you know, their priority might be, put it very simply, what the house looks like from the street. Okay, we could, as crack, you know, address that and say we won't allow any tall, hard structure, you know, just try to hear their needs and tailor the message, although it's the same message, just tailor it differently for each body. That was just a thought.
Okay. So thank you. And you just made a point for me. And I hear your concern about property owners that are anxious about short-term rentals and attacks on private property rights. Number one, it's not crack that's doing it. It's the climate that's doing it. It's us reacting to it and doing what's best for Nantucket. Number two, it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to happen over a long period of time. It's going to take review. It's going to take public hearings. We're not going to do it and say, okay, it's going to happen tomorrow. There's going to be people making comments. The homeowners groups will get together and yell at us, and it'll take time for us to do this. So it's nothing for your world to get anxious about right now. You can certainly tell them all that we're working on it, but this is precisely why we want to go to the select board and say, we want to do this. We're your advisors, and we know we can do it anyway, but we're looking for some insight. These are the factors. So those people don't have anything to worry about that right now. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I just wanted to, thanks, Peter. I wanted to respond to Shelley's sentiments. I hear you, and I think they make all good sense. You may have missed the last meeting or two where we did invite chair and vice chairs from several of the other boards and committees that we feel have oversight over CRP related issues. And my take from most of those conversations was that these folks, particularly regulatory bodies, and I'll pick on Concom as an example, Tim. Seth was very careful to say, you guys as crack have a unique perspective. You're thinking long term. Our job as regulators is to look at every NOI, every project as individual one-offs and use a filter, which is our current regulatory framework, to determine whether we can permit this, and if so, how, right? So they're limited in their perspective, and they can only focus on the short term. So what I heard from, I'll say Dave Iverson as an example from the planning board, he's saying, hey guys, you need to come talk to our staff and talk to them about what you think is important for us to consider. right? So they're not sitting there saying, you know what we need to do on the planning or the zoning regulations. We need to think about such and such that's going to be effective 15 years from now. They're not thinking that way, and they're not going to volunteer ideas to us. I think it's going to come back to us and the CRP, using the CRP as guidance, sitting down with staff for each of these boards. I mean, the Board of Health, Malcolm McNabb said, yeah, you know, we probably do need to think more about how we could have health bylaws and health regulations that are more preventive in nature as opposed to reactive. But they don't have time to start thinking about that sort of thing. So I think they're really kind of looking to us to provide that guidance. And I do think it's going to take, to Peter's point, it's going to take years. I mean, how long, Tim, has the wetland regulations update been in progress? Like 8 years. And I hope it doesn't take 8 years for us to update the zoning regulations, but for all I know, it will. So to Peter's point, I don't think there's any emergency on the horizon here, but it is something that we need to get started. Thank you.
Okay, and I just want to pick off of that, what you just said about how long it's going to take to do this, and then I'll go to Leah. It's going to take long enough so that we were going to start to see more impacts of sea level rise, and hopefully we get the point across to people. If we don't, then the climate's going to do it for us, and then hopefully we get more people on board, and then hopefully we get people coming to us and asking for help. So tell your people to chill out, Shelley. It'll be fine for a good long time.
Careful we don't shoot the messenger. That's all I'm saying.
I'm not going to shoot you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Peter. I just wanted to comment on what Gary had asked about why do we have to ask the select board. So Gary, this isn't really adding like another step. It's part of the second quarterly report under the recommendation on the last page. On the last page, there's recommendations or questions that CRAC recommends to the select board. And so during that time frame, that was a recommendation that CRAC wants to ask the select board if they can start working on that. And that meeting is on what it's tomorrow night, actually, that Peter and I will be there asking the select board. It's just a good way to keep them involved and just to make sure we're going through the process, even though I know sometimes it's arduous.
I would say when you're speaking to Lakewood, we are planning on making recommendations to you in the future based on what the regulatory agencies have said to us. Is that going to be okay with you? Just say we're planning that, and is that going to be okay with you?
Yeah, I'll say we're planning on it.
Good.
But I'm not asking if it's going to be okay with them because they want us to do it. They're looking
Good.
for it.
That's great.
They don't want us sitting around and they're looking for advice. They didn't appoint us for nothing. So thank you, Gary. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, and I think it's important to say it. I think the reason that it's necessary is some of the responsible parties in the coastal resiliency plan are the ones telling us to come to them with stuff. So, we are switching the plan a bit, with their request, but we are switching what the plan says is going to happen to, something different. I just think it's important to be upfront about that.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Are there any other comments on this one? Okay. Public outreach ideas, strategies from committee members, conversations with the Inquirer and Mirror. Tim Brain.
Yes, just a very brief report. There was a very preliminary discussion, inquiry really, about the Inky Mirror's interest in coastal resilience reporting and sea level rise reporting. It sort of started the conversation. Two interesting things that came out of it were coastal resilience and sea level rise is one of the topics they feel they should be doing more reporting on. And they are thinking about it. They don't have a plan yet. They haven't assigned an editor or anybody, but they are thinking about it. So that's good. And one other really interesting thing, apropos to your discussion with me about reporting on our meetings, they now they're trying out some new AI software that would be able to listen to our meeting and do a summary of it. So it might turn out to be quite easy for them and doesn't cost them more personnel. That isn't by any means a commitment that that's what they're going to do, but they're exploring it. So those are kind of two hopeful responses. And I think what we should do is just, and I'll take charge of this, is follow up again in a couple of weeks and just push them on it and see where we can get them to make some decisions. But it was generally, I thought, kind of a positive response. So,
If you can push them, give us a live body, that'd be great.
yeah, I'm happy to keep at this. So.
All right, thanks, Tim. Go ahead, Matt.
Just to follow up on what Tim said, I was watching Concom, I think it was zoning board or Concom a couple weeks ago, and at the bottom of, I probably have said this before, at the bottom of the YouTube was a transcript. It was almost live in real time. And I thought, this is amazing, you know, because it was catching the words, it was getting it right, even people with an accent like me. And then I looked up out while it was going, I took a look, and it will translate into about 100 languages. So it does. So not only does it do a transcript, it will translate that transcript. I looked further, and I haven't gone into this. I'm too busy to figure this out. I'm not an IT guy, but it'll also, there's AI now in programs that will turn that into minutes. There's either a full transcript or a transcript based on how you want it done. Like you can give it a form of what you'd like, how in depth, and you can ask it, and it will pop out various things that you have to just, then someone still probably has to look at it and make sure it's in the right format, etc. But where this is going is incredible, and where it already is incredible. So I think that's amazing.
I think what they can do, I don't know this for sure, is say, give me a summary of this session in 200 words or whatever, and it'll do it.
Wow.
I think that's what they're working on, but we'll find out more soon.
That's great, because I'm way behind on the minutes for the harbor. I'd rather do it myself, but okay. Sarah?
Yeah, I don't want to anger our technology overlords, but I do caution the AI generated minutes, because being on a town committee, I know we're not a regulatory committee, but I always worry about people misconstruing what you say and putting it on the Current or putting it on the Inky. And so just the caveat of like, at least a human at some point has to look at them. And obviously, if it's our own minutes, we have to approve them and do that anyway. But if it's the Inky generating a summary that they're just going to put out because they don't have reporters to spend time actually listening to us, that is a little worrisome to me. But that's just because I guess I'm old school and I'm worried about it. But
I agree with you, Sarah, and I'm going to continue to do the minutes, and then we'll let the AI in. So, are there any other comments? Okay, Doug, updated media scorecard.
I sent one to Leah, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, that is now in the second quarter update, I believe. So I think we're up to speed there. That's where we get to about 300,000 impressions.
Okay, very good. Item 13, new business committee and natural resources department reports from planning board, Concom, SHAB, select board, advisory committee of non-voting taxpayers, and other committee members. Does anybody have any updates?
Peter, before you joined the meeting, I mentioned to the committee that as part of the advisory committee for non-voting taxpayers, I was going to be sending them, or asking Leah to send to our chair, a copy of the presentation, the quarterly reports that CRAC is going to be making to the select board after the select board receives them, because I think it's a good way to educate the people on our committee who are from different parts of the island about all the work that CRAC is doing. And Doug even suggested later on at the meeting that maybe we ought to think about sending that to the Civic League to see if they want to share that with some of their communities. That's a good way for them to everyone see all the stuff that we're doing.
Yes, definitely. I agree, Gary. Leah, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I just have 2 updates for this section. So on June, I think it was June 10th, I co-taught a continuing education class for real estate agents and brokers. And that was through NAREB had invited me to do that. And there were probably, Shelley, I think maybe 40 or 45 agents there. Shelley was one of them. And thank you, Shelley, for all of your help getting this class off the ground. And so, yeah, it was a 2-hour class. I explained, all the coastal risks and pulled a lot of maps and things out of the CRP. Got some good questions and got a bunch of emails, thanking me, and Isabel, who is the certified teacher, made it, really clear that this is information that they have to disclose to their clients regarding the risks that these properties are currently facing and then potentially facing in the future. So it got some good feedback. I didn't know it was either going to go like really bad or pretty good, and I think it went pretty good. And I gave them all the brochures that we made that hopefully they'll hand out to their clients. So that was great.
So I will say I chickened out and had Leah run block, and I sat in the back and acted like I had nothing to do with it. But you voted on the minutes to approve that presentation for the quarter, but Leah, you forgot to put that in there. Like the quarter that you listed everything, you didn't put the class in there. I don't know if that's a different committee.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? It should be mentioned in your minutes somewhere, and you forgot. I didn't know if it goes in next month's or next quarters. So that was that. Right. And I'm going to try not to get too granular when I say this, but it's an encouraging thing. So Leah got some emails from real estate agents, and just to not get in the weeds with this, but just to try to show you a concrete example of this is starting to be accepted. I got an email from an agent asking me for the slides that Leah presented, in the presentation. And she said she was having a listing meeting with a waterfront property homeowner the next day. So sure enough, the house went on the market, and I followed up curious, and to not get, like I said, too granular, but currently properties on Nantucket are selling for 150% of assessed value rather. And that would have put that's a very basic formula. And for waterfront or desirable, it's usually higher, but let's just use the number that's real, 150% of assessed. That house would have gone on at about 8.75 and it went on at 6. So I understand that's still a lot of money for a house that's at risk, but I see that as progress. So I just wanted to put that out there, that as Leah said in one of her emails to me, some agents are starting to do the right thing. I don't know that charging $6 million is the complete right thing, but it's way under what market value would have been without her using those slides that Leah presented. So there we go.
Awesome.
And I was going to ask Shelley, or through Peter, if I'm able to ask her, has there been much? I was very impressed that you got that finalized. And the question is, are you getting followed by people down dark streets anymore, or what? Or is it, how much pushback are you getting from the real estate industry?
So this is going to be the least expensive summer of my life because I go nowhere. I don't spend any money. I don't go to any parties. I didn't go to any fundraisers, nothing. No, I actually spoke to one of I won't bring names into it because they didn't give me permission to say, but I did have a conversation at a gallery opening the other day with a very successful broker on the island. And he had seen the CNBC piece, and he said, I said, what do you think? And he said, look, it's, you didn't make any mistakes, he said, which was huge. And then he said, this is the way of the future. It's the way it's going to go. And he said, we may not like it, but it's coming. which I thought was rather a ringing endorsement from a real estate agent. So, you know, and Leah and I have both gotten emails from agents asking for the presentation. She sent it to everybody on NAREB, which is helpful. But we've had personal communication with agents asking us for help, which is, I'm stunned that it's this much. I know it might not seem like a lot, but I think it's an enormously warm reception considering what it means to some agents.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Leah?
And Peter, I just have one more comment. So not regarding that, but a couple of weeks ago, I had some forecasters come from the National Weather Service, and they're based out of the Boston area. And I showed them, you know, all the areas downtown that generally flood. And then we drove on the South Shore and all the erosion areas. I did that because a couple of times this winter, they didn't send, so generally they send me weather, you know, advisories or warnings that there's forecasted flooding for the island. And there were 2 instances where they didn't send that. And we had flooding downtown. And so I, you know, inquired, like, how do you decide if, you know, we're going to flood or not, and blah, blah, blah. Would it be helpful if you guys came to the island and actually saw these areas to help inform your forecasting? And they said yes. And so they came here. And that was just a great partnership to meet them and show them around and hopefully increase the likelihood of their forecasting. So I wanted to tell the committee about that. And that's all I got.
Okay, so I just have a reminder, the fiscal year ends on Sunday. And that means we, at our next meeting, whenever that is, I have a feeling I'm going to be in Maine, but we will elect officers. And well, I'll do chairman again. That's probably a relief to everybody who doesn't want to be chairman, because eventually I'm going to have to make somebody be chairman, but I'll do another year if you guys will have me, but you'll have to take that vote probably when I'm not here. And then you'll have to haggle over who's going to be secretary and who's going to be vice chair, but I just want to make sure that you knew that I was still wanted to lead you for another year. So, so anyway, discussion of upcoming meeting dates and topics. Yeah, the next meeting, July 9th, I'll be on Vinyl Haven, so I won't be there for that. Sarah, do you know if did you get to re-up?
I will find out tomorrow, so I might not be on this committee anymore. So, you know, we'll see.
Okay. In which case our most excellent secretary will be running the meeting until we get his replacement. Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, just a reminder, I sent Leah a note earlier today, a reminder that there is that site visit on Friday. Just don't lose sight of that. I know it's not an official meeting, but it should be on everybody's calendar, anybody who can make it. I'm excited to go because I'm now on island. That's it.
All right. Go ahead, Matt. Thanks, Doug.
No, just there wasn't a place to put this in today earlier, but just a comment. I've been thinking about this. I've been following congestion pricing in New York City, and you'd say, how is that, you know, related to what we do? It's something that they've been trying to do for years. They haven't got very far with it. They're about to do it. They stopped again. And I read a great, like, sort of opinion piece about it from someone that I wouldn't have thought would be in favor of it. And they were saying only about 1.5%, 2.5% of the traffic comes into New York City on cars, that most of it's other ways. And so I think that we need to be flexible in our thinking. People don't need to bring cars to New York. They need to be able to get in and out of New York. They need to get in and out safely. When we start talking about some of these areas, I think sort of Mattakit or Brant Point, I think we have to be flexible in our thinking. If we're not going to be able to stop the water, I think we can't assume that we can just raise roads and access them always the same way. Maybe it's boardwalks that the water flows under, and maybe people are using golf carts, and we get another 30, 40, 100 years in some of these areas. Whereas if we think about them as the way they are today, where we have to have a vehicle, and the only way to live on Nantucket is with a SUV, et cetera, then maybe we only get 20 or 30 years. So I just think it got me thinking about it in regards to how are we going to, sort of plan for the island and plan on ways that work and that people will embrace. So it might be that it's boardwalks, nice boardwalks, water flowing underneath, access to houses, access to beaches when they're not underwater, and and we still have a great place to live. So that's my sort of something I thought about. Thank you.
You know, Matt had worked for Fire Island in New York years ago when the community started with. They banned cars immediately, so everyone knew they got off the ferry. They had to use a golf cart because they weren't going to use any vehicle to get their stuff to Fire Island. But here it's going to be a tougher sell, obviously. Peter, there's one subject that I wanted to talk about for a future meeting, but we talked about it a little bit before, and I'm going to keep raising it until we figure out how to get some knowledge on it. And that is one of the number one priorities on our list of projects that we have not started yet is to figure out how these programs work, where people give up their homes for tax benefits, or the people who are living in the flood areas. I forget it exactly how we phrase the words, but it's one of those top 1 or 2 items of the projects not yet started. And we ought to figure out who can come to our meeting, because we did have one presentation. Now, there was one, either a presentation or an exhibit that was shown to all of us that was very, very complex and very technical about how it's being done in other parts of the country. And I think I'd love to see if we can find someone to take a look at that and figure out how it might apply to Nantucket, to the folks of us that live in the shore areas near Brant Point or Mattocket or other places that are at risk over the next 10 to 20 years.
Okay, Gary. Maybe we get that on the next agenda, or when we sort out how we can get some expert advice.
Figure out who's going to provide us with the input.
We get that on a near future agenda, maybe the second meeting in July.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Leah.
Just a question through you to Gary. Gary, are you talking about rolling easements?
I'm talking, take a look at the list of, in your summary, it showed in the first quarter summary, it showed what the top priorities are of those items not being acted on.
Updating the zoning bylaw?
No.
Can I interject, Gary? Are you talking about the strategic relocation and retreat?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay. Yes, Gary, I can talk about that. I am finalizing the scope for that. And so once I do that, it'll go out to bid. And it'll incorporate, what you're talking about, rolling easements and procedures for relocating, homes if they become within, let's say, 25 feet of a coastal bank and stuff like that. So when I finish that scope, I'll present it to you guys. And I can also see if find some professionals that can speak on it as well.
All right, thanks. And one last thing, I want to say, Sarah, thank you to Sarah for taking over for me for the 23 minutes that I wasn't at the meeting because I had a hike. And thanks to you guys for supporting her and let me do that. So thank you very much. I guess there's nothing else unless anybody has any ideas for the next meeting. So I will take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
We have a second?
Second.
The motion's been made by Matt V to adjourn and seconded by Gary Beller. I'll take a roll call vote. Doug Rose.
Aye.
Gary Beller.
Aye.
Jennifer Carberg.
Aye.
Freeman.
Aye.
Tim Brain.
Aye.
Sarah Boyce.
Aye.
Joanna Roach.
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. See you guys
Bye-bye.
out there. It's beautiful.